Hey everyone, Cutroneo here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this is video number 19 in my video progress series of Saudade No. 3 by Roland Dyens. So today, after a few days of some shorter practice sessions, I was able to practice for a full 45 minutes, and what you just heard was the first and second sections of this piece, the introduction and the dance. And I thought that initial performance was pretty good. There were some things that I'm still tweaking and working on as we go through. So starting with the introduction, I decided that I'm going to continue the rake with my index finger going through and going into the end. I decided that I want that to be a little bit faster, so I'm now working at that section at 160. Some things that I'm noticing is just keeping track of where I am as those notes are going faster. And really for me, keeping track of the count of groupings. I'm pretty much counting them as 16th notes. So I'm going 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a 5, and a 6, and a 1. And keeping that going, 1, and a 2, and a 3, and that kind of gets a little tongue-tie-y, so I just sort of keep track of the initial beats. And in my head, I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which each 4-note grouping. And that seems to help keep that in control, so that way I hear each note and it's not a smear of different notes that don't really come out. Still working on the consistency of that, so I'm doing slow, fast practice. And making sure that my articulation is even, especially there, I'm making sure that all those note groupings are even. So if I was counting that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, going there. So that's really important in that section, so that way it doesn't get carried away with itself. Keeping it at 160 for this part, that whole thing. So working on that, something that I was striving to do was hand balance in this section. So this third finger has a tendency, when I'm in this shape, to mute out that B, or sometimes I'm getting a bad sound on that slur. So I was really working on trying to make sure that that open B in the fourth grouping. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, like there, because my finger is right on that fret. So really making sure hand balance stays consistent. So what's been tricky about that is just maintaining. I feel that when I try and really pluck that hard, because there's a crescendo there, but it's a crescendo only to mezzo forte. And the crescendo, the mezzo forte arrival is on that D. So I think I just need to not overdo that and just sit back and just let it happen. Again, I'm finding that it's easier to do that in that section than starting at the beginning and then maintaining that focus. So those are things that I have to be mindful of in my practice, reinforcing that. I changed fingering for this little lick. And I changed right hand fingering just to M, I, thumb. So the idea is I'm taking that first chunk with that overall arc, making sure that this so that slur, I want to make sure I have a good ending on that trill. Nice dolce there. Here I'm just going to keep it right in time. You heard that there was a little bit of a harmonic on that B. New fingering there, tambour. So I want that all to be one big statement. So that sort of opens up, sort of with a kind of explosive opening to this. And then we get into this Lydian lento section. So there, I'm counting it, and overall the counting is coming pretty well. The second half of this, where the melody is down an octave. So that a 2E and a 3, a 2A and a 3, a 2A and a 3. So that's always, I think it's the flesh on that thumb, just the attack of that isn't as quick as the nail I'm finding. I think that's the problem that I'm having. 2A and a 3, a 2A and a 3. Like it doesn't ba-be-da-da-da-dum. A 2E and a 3, a 2A 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 and a 3. I was repeating it a whole bunch, sort of as almost sounding like a broken record, but I'm trying to figure out like what's not happening there. Right around there is where I feel the rhythm sort of goes off. If I just count it, 1, a 2E and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. The rhythm sounds pretty good and I like that, but it's about replicating that with the guitar. 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. So there, that was better, but like there's just something funky happening in those 4 beats that I'm still trying to work out that I'm not happy with how that's moving. Going into now the triplet section, 1 and a 2 and that's working, 3, 1 and a 2 and so there, dropping these fingers down to get that chord clear. That's still a little bit hit or miss. I was drilling that section out a whole lot where I'm going slowly, making sure that I'm landing there well, so I'm using stop practice. The method that I'm using, slow, and I'm stopped now. I shift. I noticed that there was no adjustment in the fingers, so that was a really good shift. So there you can see there was a little bit of an adjustment there. That wasn't as good. Not bad. So that's what I'm looking for. And then this thing as well. As I go through. So I'm working that out using slow practice, using stop practice, both stopping before the shift and the notes, then after, 1 and a 2. So that was a good landing because I didn't have to adjust anything. I was ready right to play that. That one wasn't good. That pinky didn't land right. That's a good landing. And notice that the notes came out. Felt a little tight on that landing, but it worked. That one wasn't good. You could see the hand wasn't accurate. So those are the inconsistencies that I'm working out. And those practice methods are going to be what works that out. This worked pretty well. Here. So that I drilled out a little bit. That's part of my excerpt practice. And I'm just really trying to get strong notes as I go there, and especially a good strong gliss up to that high E to last me a while. This last lick worked pretty well. So I have to be careful not to speed it up. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. As long as I keep it nice and in time and I'm not trying to push it further ahead, it works pretty well. And actually there's a decrescendo there that I didn't do either time, which I think that decrescendo will go nicely to that A. Wanting to make sure that E is ringing when I hit that chord. resolution there. That's the whole first section, sort of the things that I'm working on creating. I think the musical shape is there, keeping things moving forward, and really thinking of the larger structure. Like I said, I have 3 main sections. First section ending at the tambora, the second section going all the way through from the beginning of the lento section all the way to there. And my third section is just the last line, going from there to here, and then finally, boom, boom, going into that. So let's take a listen to the second performance of that first section. So for me, a lot of the aspects that I've been working on, I feel are coming through in the performance. A lot of the phrasing aspects are coming through pretty nicely, and there are still things that are getting better and cleaning themselves up as they go along. My practice on that section will continue in the same way, just really trying to neaten up and button up sections. But I think the overall musical framework is now pretty much in place, and so now it's just a matter of getting the consistency in the technical areas to be there, and to also support the musical structure that I've created and decided upon in that section. Now let's talk about the dance section. If you heard in the first performance of this, I'm playing this now at 80, which is the tempo that's in the music. And in this section, there's something really weird that's happening that I'm a little bit unsure of. The first thing is that I keep messing up that rhythm of that section, the first, or not the rhythm, but the notes. So I went there, I sang letter names, was able to do it while counting and singing letter names, and then it happened again, I think, in the performance. So that's an area that I just have to maybe just spend like 5 minutes just drilling in the letter names around it, and working it out a little bit better. That's just a weird thing that has started to happen. Where before that hasn't been a problem. My primary focus was counting through the whole thing, and working on it at 80, bringing the tempo up. I thought that worked pretty well going through. I focused on, as well, the hammer-ons from nowhere section, letter names, and counting. The one thing that I do notice is that in the first performance, I was not really keeping track of the rhythmical count, and it seemed to work. So I want to sort of backtrack on it for a second on that. And I'm not saying to not worry about counting when you're performing, but I want to sort of give a little bit more insight into what I'm striving to do and why the second performance you're going to hear a little bit of a hiccup. One of the things that I notice in that section is a tendency to push, and it's not grooving, and it's just a little awkward feeling. First of all, I sort of feel it all. I feel it in 8 rather than in 4, so it's 1 and 2, or it's 1 and 2 and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and that kind of thing. So it's very like agitated feeling rather than. feeling the bum 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 ba 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 bum ba be ba be da ba ba bum. So I'm really trying to get that upbeat, offbeat melody to settle itself, and doing that through counting, obviously. But what I notice is that when I'm counting in my head, I lose track of the count, and I often put the beat emphasis on the hammers rather than the chords, which are on the beat. So you get this, this sort of, or this bottom. And these now start sounding like upbeats. So that's really what I'm focused on there. And because the counting, even though I can count it out loud and go 3 and 4 and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1, 2 and 3 and... Even though I can do that, when I do it in my head, I'm still, like, I can hear that count is not crystallized, and it's not as solid in my mind when I'm counting it. So that's a great example of, as I focus on trying to keep that happening, I get a little funky in the hands, and that's what happened in that, what you'll hear in the final performance is just that count not solidified itself. I mentioned 2 videos back, and I'll link the video up in the cards somewhere here, that I was going to reverse the order of focus, and I was going to say letter names first and then count. And I did that here, and I feel it really worked quite better. My fingers know where they're going, but it's very much muscle memory rather than a note memory. And so what the letter names are helping me do is just keep track of what the melody notes are and making sure that the fingers are going to the right frets for those notes. And if I'm not singing those letter names, I'm going off of physical muscle memory. And with this being such an odd feeling section, the muscle memory, anything that happens to the muscle memory where it starts feeling different will make it just fall apart, which is what you hear on previous videos up to here, is just that, I hadn't to this point really developed a solid memory. The rhythm now is the focal point of my practice to really make sure the rhythm, I can keep track of it in my mind and keep track of where the beat is. I can feel that as I'm doing this. And you heard I already made a slight mistake, that really trying to line up all of those things really messes with my mind, which is what throws me off as I'm playing it. So that's the reason why when you hear the second performance, it gets a little funky. And I think the second half where I'm doing the palm muted section, or excuse me, the pizzicato section, as I'm doing that, I get a little thrown off towards the end with the melody. Right here, I think it's the second time, because as I'm playing, my head just went somewhere else about the hammer-ons from nowhere, which is, that should not have happened, but we're human, we make mistakes. So let's take a listen to the dance section, and then we'll check back and wrap up. So that was my practice for today. I thought it was very productive. There are a lot of things that I'm actively working on, and right now this week seems to be illuminating areas of this piece that are still not quite 100%. And those need to be the areas that I'm focused on, whether it's specific small sections or making a larger concept work for myself. My next practice, again, sort of moving forward and thinking about how I would do this if I'm going to not have a lot of time. Let's say I only have like 30 minutes or 20 minutes. I will focus on the third movement or the third section. If I have a full amount of time, I will probably work on the opening and that third section. That's sort of the game plan. I have specific areas that I'm going to practice as I go through. Make sure I hit them. If I'm working on the opening again, I'm going to really work on continuing to solidify the larger shape, and within that larger shape work on the consistency of accuracy and some of those technical details that are necessary to make things work. With the third section, it's continuing to refine some of those transition areas, tricky fingering passages, and the things that I talked about in the last video. Again, we'll link up here for you to be reminded of what that is. So my next video will be the 6th video of the week, and I think for the 7th video of the week, it's going to be a little different. I think I'm going to do a overview performance of the piece, and I'll sort of go into more detail of that in our next video. If you stuck around to the end, thanks again for watching. I continue to appreciate the continued support on this video series. Please give a big thumbs up if you've stuck to the end. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Hit that bell notification button so that way you are notified every time I release a new video. With all that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow in the next video.